Funerals, death. How do you handle that? When we were Jehovah's Witnesses, we had all the answers. We knew exactly where we came from. We knew exactly where we're going. We knew exactly where we are. And the subject of death, funerals, and what happens to us after we die was very simple. As a matter of fact, that hope of everlasting life and paradise or going to heaven and becoming a king was very simple doctrine, and everybody was looking forward to it. We were all looking forward towards seeing people who would be resurrected, and that hope was very strong. But what about now? What do you do when somebody is maybe at a last stage of their life, when you know that they will die? Is there anything that you can say? Because previously we knew what to say. We were always talking about the resurrection. We were always talking about the paradise. If it was our brother in the congregation that was dying, maybe to cancer or anything, that we just simply knew that he doesn't have a chance of surviving longer, we would always bring things up like the wonderful hope of resurrection and the fact that we're gonna see him again or her. But after we left, maybe your faith in that is shattered, and now you don't know what to say. Maybe you feel actually very awkward around this subject and you don't know what to mention. Well, I think what is important to us more than anything else at the end of our life is to know how much we mattered. It's to know that our life had a meaning, that what we have done, the love that we shared, the things that we contributed made a difference. So I think it's important to actually spend some time with people that we loved and cherished, and knowing that they'll soon be gone, to simply polish up on some memories, to remind them of all the things that they have done for us, that how our life is better because they were part of our life, because they impacted our life for the better, what we've learned, what we're going to carry forward from their experience, from their wisdom, from the things that they have done. And even the smallest things can make a gigantic difference. Somebody came and shared something with you, gave you a lesson, warned you about something, or simply showed you that they love and care about you. And that was maybe enough for you to become a better person because you saw that as an example and you carrying that in your life. And maybe that's what you're teaching other people, including your kids. I think that's what we want to know, that we made a difference. And I think that is what is very important around that subject of death to mention to people. However, when it comes to funerals for Jehovah's Witnesses mixed with ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, this is a day that a lot of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses were maybe not even thinking of. Many witnesses, they were just, they were like, I'm done with this religion. I don't want anything to do with it. I'm never going back to the Kingdom Hall. I'm done. And they take a piece of paper and they write a letter of disassociation, and they're like, boom. And they never thought of the fact that they still have family who are witnesses, and there will be funerals, and they might have to deal with inheritance, and they might have to deal with their siblings and the family who are still witnesses, which makes it 100 times more difficult if somebody was disfellowshipped or disassociated. So I always just tell people, there's no reason to write the letter of disassociation because it literally harms you. It was designed to harm the person writing that letter and protect the congregation from the person who's resigning. So there's no benefit. Maybe psychologically a person feels a closure for a moment, but in the long run, that thing can really harm somebody for life. So it's very important to understand that, hey, maybe there is no reason for me to disassociate, and maybe there will be consequences in the future, especially around the subject of death, inheritances, dealing with family members, that disassociation and being disfellowshipped really brings things to a totally different level. But what if you do have the situation? And I had basically two examples. An example of my own father who passed away, and my father was a Catholic. So I got to see basically the contrast between Jehovah's Witness funeral and the Catholic funeral. I went to many Catholic funerals and many Jehovah's Witnesses funerals, so I'm pretty sure most of you know the difference. But it was interesting to watch how in the congregation where I grew up, where I spent most of my entire childhood, where people knew my father in that congregation. They knew us, me and my three sisters, very, very well. And we went back. Obviously, we were here in Canada. My father was in Poland. We went back, and nobody from that congregation came to the funeral. I was shocked. I thought that a lot of people would show up because we were very close to them. We grew up with them. They were our closest friends during the time. And I thought during the time of the funeral, they will come and support us. And not one person did. Tons of Catholics obviously came. People had no idea who they were. And they supported us on that day. Interestingly enough, there was another funeral of my mother-in-law. Now, my mother-in-law was a Jehovah's Witness. And we already faded away when that happened. She passed away, and in order to honor her wishes, obviously we wanted to have a Jehovah's Witness giving a talk at the funeral home, not at the Kingdom Hall. And obviously we invited everybody that we knew, that the congregation would come, and some Catholic family would come, and some non-witnesses came, ex-witnesses came. See, funeral is this kind of a day where Jehovah's Witnesses, they don't really know how to act. Okay, a lot of them are very awkward because if an ex-Jehovah's Witness, a disfellowship person, shows up at the wedding, they will leave. A lot of Jehovah's Witnesses would leave knowing that there was a disfellowship person, or if an apostate shows up at the wedding, then for sure they'll be way too afraid to stay. The rule of thumb is this: if there is a disfellowship person at a wedding, it could be a father of a bride, doesn't matter. But if you have privileges, like you're an elder or ministerial servant, and you stay there, you technically associating yourself with a disfellowship person, sharing meals, sharing a party, and your privilege could go up for review, and you could lose that privilege. Now, when it comes to funerals, most of the time there is some food served after the ceremony, and if there is an ex-witness or disfellowship person, or even an apostate that shows up, and the witnesses don't really know how to behave because it's a funeral. What do? Do you talk to that person? Should we avoid them? What if that person is like a key person in the family? And talking to many witnesses who experienced this, they felt very hurt because they show up at the funeral and a lot of people would talk to them, and they would shake hands, and they would hug them, and they would cry with them, and they would, make a conversation, and they would ask how they're doing. And yet, a day later, they would see exactly the same people on the street, and the person would turn their heads and pretend that they don't exist. It's actually mind-boggling how that happens. And it's interesting to watch how people can truly change from one day to the next, but they don't know how to act. They literally have to be told what is allowed, what is not allowed. Are they allowed to say hi to somebody who's disfellowshipped at a funeral, and they're not allowed to say hi at a wedding? Right? It's different circumstances, and they're coming up with rules as we speak. It's quite odd. But when you're going, let's say you are an ex-Jehovah's Witness, and you were disfellowship or you disassociate yourself, regardless, and you're going to this event, you're gonna see people that maybe you haven't seen in a long time. Maybe they hurt you. You're gonna see maybe elders that disfellowshipped you. Whatever it was, it's gonna be definitely very emotional. So you gotta prepare yourself, right, for it. But remember, none of these people over there, no matter what kind of looks they give you and what they think of you, they don't want to harm you. Not purposely. They actually want you to live forever in the paradise earth. They actually want that stuff for you. So many of them might make comments, things like, "Oh, you know what? If your father passed away, when he will be resurrected, he will be asking for you." I heard those comments myself. Like, well, your father, my father was a Catholic. He was opposing to Jehovah's Witnesses. And now Jehovah's Witnesses are saying, well, he died, so he's going to be resurrected, and now he's going to be looking for me. And what are we supposed to tell him if you're not there? You might have to go to an elder and ask him to give a talk, let's say, for your parents' funeral. It's not going to be easy, and you're most likely going to be very emotional about this, especially if you were disfellowshipped or you disassociated yourself. It's not an easy thing to do. However, remember a couple of things. Number one is you're not paying them to do this. They're not your employees. They don't have to do this. If they decide to do it, it's out of their own kindness. Okay? You can't force somebody to do this for you, especially if you're not paying them. So I would say be grateful if they actually do it, and be thankful, because it's not easy for them either. At the same time, I would say be quite clear about your expectations. So when my mother-in-law passed away and we wanted certain things to be mentioned about her, we had it written down on a piece of paper, and we said, okay, during your talk, please mention those things. And we had the whole list. Now, unfortunately, the speaker looked at the list and he's like, there's no way I'm going to mention all this, because there's just simply not enough time. And I got to talk about Lazarus, I got to talk about Abraham, I got to talk about the paradise on earth, and blah, blah, blah. And we're like, what are you talking about? This woman has been serving in the congregation for decades. She actually had a stroke, and for like almost 20 years, she couldn't properly walk, she couldn't speak. But her life, she lost half of her body, and she would put makeup, she would get dressed, and it took her like an hour to get ready for the meeting, and she was there, and she needed to be there. And you, at the end of her life, don't want to mention anything about her, and you just want to mention when she was born, and when she got married, how many kids she had, and when she was baptized. That's it. I remember I was really uncomfortable with this, even though I really liked that guy, and he was a very nice and kind person. But I'm like, this is just unbelievable that after all those things, you can't have birthdays, you can't have you can't celebrate those things, because you're not supposed to glorify a person. And they usually say, oh, a day of death is better than a day of being born. They quote the scripture often. But here's a day when they died, and this is a moment when we're supposed to celebrate somebody's life, and you don't want to mention anything about the person's life except dry facts. I was not happy about it, to be honest. So we talked to another elder, and I'm like, listen, I remember from the talk, I never gave a talk on the funeral, but I remember that at the bottom of that outline, there was a provision to even interview people who were close and mention about that person. So I don't understand why the speaker does not want to mention about the person's life. And truthfully, yes, there is a provision for the family members or people who are very close to the deceased person to be interviewed and mention things, as long as they are Jehovah's Witnesses in good standing. And you have to, prior to the talk, interview them and find out what is it that they want to talk about. Basically, Jehovah's Witnesses want to control even the interview. They just want to make sure that whatever you're saying agrees with all their teachings and all their doctrines and whatever they believe in. You can't say anything controversial, even at the funeral of your own parent. So they want to basically make sure that everything goes their way. So I would say this: in our circumstances, we wrote on a piece of paper exactly what we wanted to be mentioned, and the speaker refused, which was weird. But after going back and forth and being super nice about it and kind about it, he agreed that after his talk, he will ask the son of the deceased mother to come out and give a few minutes speech about how was her life. And we were super happy about it, right? And at the end of the funeral, when we talked to people, everybody was so happy. They said, "Oh, when her son came out and gave a little speech about her, we loved it so much. It was like it came from the heart, right?" And that's how we wanted to remember that person who passed away. So I would say, be very clear about your expectations, but remember these people are doing you a favor by giving a talk. You're not paying them; they're volunteers, and that's important to remember. Remember that these people actually don't want anything bad for you. They don't want to hurt you. When you come to the funeral, when they're thinking about, "Oh, I wish this person would return. I wish this person would become a witness again," they don't want you to die. They don't want you to die at Armageddon. They believe it very strongly. They want you to live in paradise on earth. They want you to see the person who passed away. They believe in resurrection so strongly that very often they would say things like, if you want to see that person again, if you want to see your mother, if you want to see your father, if you want to see your grandparents, whoever passed away, if you want to see them again, then you know what to do. I said it myself. And we might kind of feel angry at that moment, like, "Oh, they're trying to manipulate me and stuff like this." But truthfully, that's what they know. That's what they know the best. And they're trying to give you what they believe is the best. So don't be angry with them. Just be grateful for the moment. They're not coming to harm you. They're coming to share whatever it is that they believe is the best. So funerals might be one of those days where it's going to be very emotional. It's very hard sometimes, and might be awkward at the same time, because you know that the same people who will welcome you, will say hi to you, will talk to you on the funeral, the next day you'll see them on the street and they'll turn their heads and they will not even say hi. That's their culture. That's what they believe, that they're doing the best. I would say don't blame them, because chances are you've been doing the same thing. At least I remember most of us were doing that, right? I remember I was. That's how I was trained. Went to a funeral, saw this fellowship person that came, and I saw people talking to that person, and I was like, what? Why today we can talk to him and tomorrow we can't? Like, it's just weird. It was weird to me. But many ex-Jehovah's Witnesses are saying that they went to the funeral and people were talking to them like nothing ever happened. And the next day, back to normal shining. It's odd, it's weird, but at the same time, you remember that you are the one that is free. That these people are under the control of the indoctrination. They are the one afraid of you. They're a lot more afraid of you than you are of them. Remember that. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.